Hey YouTube, we're here with the T-28. Been doing a video, show you guys how I do these lights, navigation lights in this case, and landing lights that are just going to be always on. And you can see this wing is not done, and I always do a tail light as well, just so you can kind of see how this goes. I'm going to do a video tutorial on the other side. I'm going to try to give you the highlights, not every little detail of course, but as you can see it's a mess here in the shop, just so you can kind of see how this works. It's actually wired into the servo leads. I've learned that helps to save a little bit on wire length and all that good stuff. You can make sure you have yourself some touch-up paint. Today I'm just using servo wire. Sorry, it's kind of a mess. I was in a hurry last night. But I just separate out the white lead, and I'll use that on the next set of projects. And just use the red and black in this case. You could use whatever colors you prefer. And real quick, I'll just go ahead and get my tripod set up. Got the soldering iron heating up, and these are the LED strips I've got, just labeled white, red, and green because it's kind of hard to tell unless you. The whites are easy because they kind of got this color to them. And then I have a bunch of resistors and different things that different sizes might be needed. This is the older style I'd been using. It had like 3 little filaments in each LED. Which is nice. They were super bright, but these ones seem to be about the same brightness, and they've only got the one. But they are different sizes slightly, and they're very thin, so they're a little harder to work with, particularly in stripping them off of the paper. So anyway, keep watching, you'll see the rest. Okay guys, first things first, we got to get this plane flipped over. In this case, I'm going to have the battery popped out so that I can plug it in and do stuff from the side. This is the side I already worked on yesterday. As you can see, the servo wire tape has to be pulled back, and then I added a new channel, drilled a straight hole and another hole, and you can see the red and black lines there. There's 2 sets of them, and then the resistor goes on the negative lead, as with any other LED project. So I just do that and then bury it back into the foam. And so we're going to show you that on the other side today. So we'll just bring this so it's in a comfortable spot. It's kind of a pain to do this. There's no getting around it. It's a huge pain to do this project. So if you don't like working hard, just tape them on the outside. In my case, I'm using this drill bit, which is 1/8 of an inch, nice and sharp, longer than you need. And basically, I'm gonna make a channel into my servo pocket here. And there's 2 or 3 different ways to do this effectively. But I've learned if you have a sharp enough bit, you can do it by hand. And it actually makes it quite a bit easier to control the speed and the potential screw-ups. And if you just kind of push it in, it'll feed itself in, and then you can just go in and out, and it'll pull out the extra material. And yes, you do run a risk of running this through the wing and out the top or bottom, so be careful. You can see I'm just walking it in a little bit at a time. Now sometimes I use a hot bit. I'll actually heat up the tip, and if you once in a while just eyeball this, you'll actually make sure you're on track, and then you just want to generally point. Try to avoid right where the control horn comes out of the servo. And every once in a while just pull it out, and then as you push it rotates itself if you have a sharp enough bit. It looks like I'm favoring a little bit up, but I think I'll be okay. Plus I've got this navy decal here that's going to help to protect and hide that. And every once in a while you may actually want to pull it out and just check your depth. So it looks like I'm here, and I need to be probably about here. So you can actually hold on to the shaft of the drill bit there, and that will help guide you to the proper depth. You can also throw a piece of tape. Yep, and there it is. So let's give you guys a quick view. I know it's going to be a little tricky to show you every little detail, but it's protruded through. So now, just push that in and out a couple of times, clear the channel, and if you really want to make your channel neat, what you can do is you can heat this up with a torch and then slide it through quickly, and it will actually clean that hole up nicely. So now that that's opened, you can do this either direction. I'm going to go ahead and start by taking these wires, which I've already prepped, and I'm going to get a servo, or excuse me, I'm going to get my LED, which in this case it's going to be the red light, so we have the green light over there, and then we'll do the landing light here in a minute. Okay guys, we're here on the counter getting ready to do the soldering. Normally I don't work in such a big mess, but been doing that today. Try to do a little zoom in. You can see these LEDs are very small, and they're tricky to get off because the soldered joint is on the back side of these, whereas the old ones I used to use was actually on the sides. So, and make no mistake, you're going to use different size resistors, and I'll show you how I figured that out. It's actually really simple. I do not do math on this. I just test, and I test for temperature, because temperature is the enemy of most electronics, and they will eventually die if you get them too hot. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my extra sharp X-Acto, and I'm going to not impale myself with it. That's the first step. Second step is I'm going to get up behind, and no, I am not going to break it free. I'm just simply putting pressure on it. So I'm just walking it in there, and it looks like this LED broke. So as you can see, it's broken, so I got to eliminate this one. Okay, so that's why when you buy these, you get strips like this. So there might be hundreds of LEDs there. So we're just going to abandon that one and just go to the next one. So we're just going to strip that little piece off. We're going to go to the next one. Now, yes, of course, you could just use these in the strips if you really wanted to do that. I'm not going to recommend you do it that way, because that's not what I do. You're going to have to run it at full 3S voltage, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've done it before, but I just like the look of a neat small LED. So now that we've only got one here, what I'll do is I'll try to zoom in so you can get a view of this. And the trick is to heat the backside, and what's going to happen is eventually that solder will heat from the front actually, and it's quite tricky to do this, so you're not going to be able to see it very good. And yes, you can overheat and damage the electronics here, just like the heat that we want to avoid when we're actually going ahead and using these on the plane. Yes, it is hard on your equipment to do this too. So I'm basically heating the negative and positive leads, and I'm just gonna real quickly tap it off. Yep, so now it's off. So the other thing too is if you look at these LEDs very close, there's a positive and negative marking on the LED, but I found that the easiest way to tell is to just simply look. There's a positive and negative marking on the actual LED strip. Positive, negative, okay? So in this case, it looks like on the green one, there's a little triangular notch that tells you which one's negative. You can also look at the shape. This side's fatter than this side, so what you can do is you can assume the negative side is going to be the collector, not the emitter. So when you pick up the LED, you can just look at it and you can say, okay, so this side's the negative side. Whoops, sorry guys. So the bigger side is negative. So that's what we're going to do is we'll just mark that real quick. I gotta be honest, I'm not used to doing this in front of a camera, so it's a little tricky to kind of keep everything lined up. So there's just a very small black mark, so it's not going to be confusing later, and we don't have to sit there and try to look for the emitter and collector. Now if you look at the back side of this little thing, what we're going to do is we're just going to lay that down. We're going to lay that down knowing where the negative side is. So in our case, the negative is going to be toward us. And so this side's negative, that side's positive. So I'll put my sharp blade away. And then I'm going to grab my wire. This wire needs to be separated, stripped, tinned. So we just take those two, separate the silicone, clip a little bit off, take a little bit less than you think you want, because it's going to shrink back some as you work with it. Okay, so we got those copper exposed. So now we can take our soldering iron. In my case, I use a Weller soldering iron, just a cheapy, you know, $20 one or whatever. And then I'm gonna zoom out a little bit here while I do this. I'm just gonna tin the leads, dip it into the solder, transfer as much heat, and then let it wick into the wire. Okay. Yes, I use leaded solder. Sorry, EPA, too bad. Leaded solder works better, it flows better, it's heavier, which is not good in an application for flight, but I'd rather have heavier that works because you can use less of it. And in case it was ever a question, I do have an exhaust vent system in my basement, but I don't need it for this little bit of soldering. All right, guys, I'm going to zoom in as much as I can and see if we can't pick this up for you, because it's very small. All right, there we go. Remember, negative's on this side. Hold that wire where you want it to be oriented when you're done. Okay, not much heat's needed here, guys. That's why you tin the lines first. And there you go. Now that holds onto your LED for you. Okay, now this other side appears to have the paper slash filament on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just heat it quickly, and that should pop right off. Probably stuck to the tip of my soldering iron here. Nope, didn't. Okay, so I've got that cleaned up and ready. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do the red side. Now you can hold it up, or whatever angle is easiest to work with. And I want that red wire to protect as soon as I come out of that. So I'm going to sit there and hold it like this, and I'm just going to touch it. Yep, and I've got a good contact now. So then I can take my cutters, and I'm not going to do this for every one of the lights, obviously. I'm just going to ride them in at a little 45-degree angle. I'm going to trim it, and you can see how nice and neat that looks. Simple, nothing too fantastic there, guys. You're not even going to hardly see this unless you really get close up, because I mean, look how dinky this thing is. I'm zoomed in a ton. So now the wicking has pulled solder up into this, but that's okay. Now I'm going to show you how I test this. I'm going to go ahead and pause it, and I'll carry over to my test area. Okay, guys. Yep, that's just a crashed little homemade plane I made. I got a little battery here, pull some voltage off. I'll go to an orange RX receiver. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of orange. Lemon has done so much of a better job, and they're typically a little bit cheaper. Well, at least you get more feature for them. So now I have in my hands a 33 ohm, I think it's an 1/8 of a watt resistor, and I'm just going to write it in the channel right here on my servo lead. And that's just going to give me my negative lead so that I can hook up my wires. You can see I've got this little bundle of wires. Now, you're probably wondering, why don't you just trim that off, Brian? Well, the reason I do that is because I'm a cheapskate, so now I can save every last little bit of it. This is my LED. You can see how small that is. And then I got the other end of the wire. The red and black are tinned and ready to go. So I'm just going to take and ram this red wire in next to the red, well, in this case, it's orange, because it's a Turnigy style or whatever. So now you can see, look at that, nice and bright. And incidentally, I guess I thought I was doing the white or red one here. Sorry about that, guys. This was actually, that was a 22 ohm resistor, because I thought I was doing my red LED. In this case, I'm going to do a 33 ohm resistor. It won't burn them out immediately, but if you use too low resistance, you're going to eventually burn out the LED. Okay, so I'm going to pick this back up. And so you can just kind of keep that in close proximity. Okay, I'm not making contact with one side or the other yet. Or it's burned out, but I doubt it. Oh, just pulled out from the positive side, that's all. And yes, I could build a rig for this, but guys, I don't really care that much. Too much work. So basically, once we get that in there... Okay, now it's in there. Sorry about that. The idea is then you can test your LED and make sure it's going to work when you're all done, so you don't have it buried in your plane and then have to come back to it and figure out what you did wrong. For whatever reason, this one is not firing, so I wonder if maybe I did burn out the LED. That would kind of stink, but that is part of the game, I guess, if you do it this way. Nope, it's working. Okay. So as you can see, then all you do is you sit there and hold the lead, you hold the resistor, and you hold the light. And if you really want to tell if it's getting hot, you put it between your lips. Your lips are more sensitive to the temperature. Don't lick it, because you'll get tased. But this will tell you if it can handle the resistance. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just simulating the output that's going to be very similar. Now this is a 3S battery I have hooked up over here. Even though it's a smaller 3S battery, it's still fine. Okay, so we're a little bit warm, but we're not hot. So that means we should be good to go with this 33 ohm resistor. So we've ran long enough that it would have built up some heat. Yeah, it's warm. It's warmer than my body temperature, so it's probably 100 degrees, but that's nothing for electronics. All right, guys, I'm going to pause it here, and we'll take you back to the other side. Okay, guys, so now that we've kind of got this light, of course, this is our white light, which means it's going to go out on the tip of the wing, just like we did over on the other side. So it looks like I came in on this hash mark, which is, I mean, there's nothing magical about that, but if you look at a T-28, it's got a little light that actually folds down for landing lights. And we're just trying to kind of mimic the look of it. We're not trying to get super specific on the way that it ends up looking. Because the light, you're not going to see the housing that it's in anyway. It's going to glare. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make a long enough lead to get me back to about this area. And it doesn't need to be exactly, but I don't want to be short, so I'll waste a little bit of wire here, cheapskate and all. So I'm just going to take this wire now that we know we want it about that long. We're going to cut it, and then we can start feeding it through. And this part, you've already seen me do it down here on the wingtip, getting through to this channel here, and you can kind of see in there the debris and whatnot that's inside there.